Welcome to NDZ, Niagara Discussion Zone, where the topic is anything and everything. This show is not politically correct and there are no safe spaces. We're honest, we speak our minds, and if you get offended, that's too bad. Consider this your only warning.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tony Caruso from NDZ. I know it's been a while since I had my little podcast out, but I'm back at it. And as you all know, I recently became a paralegal about 2 months ago, and I'm going to start a couple little segments called Know Your Rights. And today, you better listen to this one because it has to do with landlords and tenants. And I have a very, very special guest with me today from the Ontario Landlords Watch Group. Miss Guest, would you be able to tell us your name and a little bit what you do?
Hi, everybody. My name is Kayla Andrade. I manage a Facebook Ontario Landlords Watch Group. We try to get as many investors on there as possible so that we are able to connect landlords together to know our rights, know what's in the Residential Intensive Act, the Landlord and Tenant Board, and definitely our municipal laws that tend to interfere with the rental industry in general.
And how long have you been doing this for, and are you a landlord yourself?
I started off in 2010, starting this group for landlords based on a municipal bylaw that had been passed in Cambridge, which has now spread into many municipalities across Ontario with the water billing. So landlords are now responsible for tenants' delinquent utility bills for their water and sewage if the tenants fail to pay it. So I just decided to call as many landlords as I possibly could, get a petition drafted, and get the support we needed through at a municipal level so we can move to a provincial level to stop this type of this policy from spreading into other residential industries for the landlords.
And how have you been accomplishing that to date?
Right now, it's been great. Our group has grown so much. I am a landlord myself, so I do have a fiveplex and a triplex. We are obviously looking for other investments and where to invest. And as everyone knows, this is a very, very weird market.
Oh, and especially right now. I don't know about the housing in your city, but here in Niagara Falls, the housing market has exploded. We have people from Toronto, they're selling their house in Toronto, coming over here, buying 6 and 7 houses with the one purchase house that they sold in Toronto. So they actually exploded our market here, and it's even the youth is very hard to buy a house nowadays.
Oh, Cambridge is feeling the Toronto market. They're coming down. They're picking up the single-family homes, renting them out between $1,700 to $2,200 plus utilities. And it's definitely the tenant industry of looking for apartments. They're feeling the burn, and the politicians, they're getting phone calls, and they're crying affordable housing crisis now, but they're not looking at the smaller landlords that can benefit them in creating more housing.
Yeah, but there's also a provincial mandate that was sent out. I believe the zoning now is R2 across the province. If you have a single-family dwelling, technically speaking, you're allowed to rent out to 2 families. Am I correct?
They are starting to work it where they do want secondary units. You'll see a lot of municipalities trying to introduce that type of policy. The time frame of them introducing that policy is a very slow process, and we don't have enough knowledge out there trying to get these investors into creating secondary units, not only secondary units, but if that house is capable of getting a triplex in there, let's work with that private landlord and stop focusing all the monies into government housing, which is costing more taxpayers because we need to create housing with utilities included.
Now, as you are aware, there's also good landlords and there's also bad landlords. Same thing with bad tenants and good tenants. Now, if you having, for example, let's use the Toronto investment as an example. We have people from Toronto coming to Niagara Falls, buying 4 or 5 houses and renting them out. Do you feel that there should be a property manager on these sites or like patrolling these houses? Because it's pretty hard that you got to pick up the phone call and call somebody from 2 hours away and you're having a hard time. Like, what would you do, or what would you advise to landlords on how to be a good landlord?
Being a good landlord is about treating your tenants like your customer. We are looking at a house, but we're looking at a business. So when you get that business, you want to look at what can I do to make this place good so that it can bring me customers. You're going to have the way that the property is, where it is located, what interior design is happening, and what is the rent price. If we see our current market the way it is and how there's very limited units on the market, landlords are letting it run down because they know people will come and take it. But if you create more units on the market, the landlords now have to be competitive with their pricing, the interior design, the location of where it is, and trying to spruce that area up as much as they possibly can. But we need to make sure that they are focusing on creating more investment units on the market. But currently, the way that they are trying to do it is a lot of new development into nonprofit housing, which is $7 million or approximately 24 units. Now, I'm not, we got to work on what kind of properties and what the property prices are currently, but can we really put that money into creating these triplexes in the homes that are currently here, that are currently on the market, or do we keep trying to fund government housing or work with the smaller landlords?
But okay, getting back to government housing, right now there's a huge shortage. I'm not sure about your area, but here in Niagara, there's a huge shortage. What do you think about some municipalities giving money to motels to house these people? Why can't they give it back to the landlords or give them a reduction of their property tax?
I agree. I agree that there should be incentives to keep people in their housing where it's coming from the government. Sometimes there is people on social assistance, so checks can get directed to you, but the tenants can also stop that direct payment to the landlord as they request, which could lead into non-payment of rent. Then there's an eviction process, and only now would the other agencies, such as Luther would help bail out that tenant out of an eviction process, only if they can cover a certain amount of that debt as well.
Now, do you find it, I don't know if you ever evicted somebody or you were part of a hearing, if somebody's on social benefits or Ontario Works, for example, and they stop the payment on you, did you ever find it at the Landlord Tenant Board that there's been issues about you receiving your pay, or if they're more favorable with tenants?
For myself, I've never been into the Landlord Tenant Board with any of my tenants. I have been a landlord since the age of 18.
So you're the good landlord.
And we have never had to evict a tenant and go through the eviction process. But knowing from the other landlords and what happens and how many landlords are not familiar with the Landlord and Tenant Board, so they go into payment arrangements with tenants that can financially not make their obligation, which just buys more time of the time period of the payment arrangement, and or just the 11-day standard eviction, and buys more time for the tenants to do a midnight move almost.
And what about the no pets clause? So if you, for example, if I have a big pit bull, or if I have a German Shepherd, or any kind of dog, for instance, and I want to bring it to your house, and there's a no pets clause, I have to honor that, right?
Based on my knowledge that you're coming into a rental unit and having the tenant saying that they have no dog, they can move in and they can get a dog, and you're not going to be able to go through the eviction process, from my knowledge, my personal experience with other landlords, because they have a dog. Unless the dog is causing damages, is interfering with other tenants within the building, that might be the gray area where they might grant an eviction.
And what about if it's on your contract, no pets?
From what I can understand right now, that it has to abide by the Residential and Tenancy Act, and if it does not apply to the Residential and Tenancy Act, then it's void.
Okay, so
you could probably ask more to that with your paralegals.
That's right. So I was just going to let you know.
I know you can't give me any legal advice.
Just to let you know.
What's going on personal advice?
Oh, for sure. But just to let you know that the no pets clause on a contract, for all my viewers listening out there, and including to all the landlords, if you think that you can get away with it by putting no pets on your contract, it's void. It is void. You cannot put that on a contract, because if you go to the Landlord and Tenant Board and appeal saying, look, Mr. Adjudicator and Miss Adjudicator, they signed a no pet clause into this contract, well, that section is void. It's in the Landlord Tenant Act. So I just want to let everybody know that. So if you think that you're a person that you're renting out to that will not bring a pet inside the house, unfortunately, you need to think again if you want to be a landlord or not for that particular situation.
Tony. I've been to a few presentations regarding landlord and tenant law, and they say that the lease is almost not worth the paper it's wrote on.
It's
and
true.
The tenant's usually always right.
Now, with my experience, and maybe your experience, because you've been around for a little bit, you said, yeah, you've been doing this since you were 18 years old. I don't want you to get political here. You know what I mean? I don't want you to get political at all. I don't want you to tell me.
No, I'm not. I did that once. I'm not doing that again.
Perfect. Now, when there's a conservative government, I guess it's safe to say that they're pro-landlord, and when you have a liberal government, it is pro-tenant. Have you been experiencing this with your experience?
You know what? It all depends on which type of candidate you're going to be talking to, from liberals to PCs. But from my understanding, that each party had their hand in messing up the Residential and Tenancy Act.
No.
But I do have to admit that Rob Leone, he was PC. He was very, very helpful with, bringing awareness to the issue. And I know of another MP that is PC as well, so that they are also, in fairness, that the Landlord and Tenant Board is also geared in towards protecting the tenants. It's definitely a balance of which one to want to get involved to help landlords, but they see that we have more voter tenants than we do landlords. So
right.
They tend to go with the issue that brings them the most votes.
That's true. And what about, okay, so we discussed a little bit beforehand about gray areas. What would you like to see done? So let's just say that the government of Ontario said they came to your organization and they asked you, what is input that you would like us to do? So you being head of the Landlord Watch Group, what would you like to see implemented?
Besides having the whole Residential and Tenancy Act being reviewed and having both parties of the tenant advocacy group and the landlord advocacy group at the table to help make these changes, not just certain sections, it's more on the fairness that it's the structure in itself, the time frame that they need to speed up the eviction process through the tenant's actions. So if every tenant knows that you need to have your rent paid on the 1st, but landlords are now having to wait until the 2nd to give a 14-day notice for them to either pay, and then you have to apply to the Landlord and Tenant Board with crazy amount of fees. So the struggle and the frustration and the time frame that it takes to try to evict someone, especially this is just a normal person. We have people who know the system and know how to work those loopholes and know how to appeal a Landlord and Tenant Board judgment. That brings on more time, and that's where landlords get a bad taste in their mouth to the point where, do I want to be in this industry?
And going back now to the legal part, I have to jump in on this one. Have you ever heard of the term professional tenants?
And professional tenants, we would think, they are single, they have great jobs, and they're moving into your place. But professional tenants had gotten a bad word for themselves because there's getting more and more. And you know what? Sometimes it's not about blaming them. It's just the times are tough. Wages are tough. The utilities are tough. Food, the rent is soaring through the roof. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they got to do what they have to do to try to feed their family, which I get it sometimes because I've rented in my past, so it's just about getting the professional tenants to stop scamming the landlords that are the smaller landlords who cannot financially take this burden, and sometimes even a bigger industry and a bigger company. They're still going through their changes, and they can't provide to their properties and maintain their properties if they're constantly not having the income coming in from the rental units. So that's why we could be seeing some rundown places if the landlord is not being able to collect his rent.
And that's true too. But on the other, what I was getting at in regards to professional tenants is, before we were talking about how to get them evicted, or where we want to bring them to the Landlord Tenant Board, for instance. And if they put a claim against you, and you're about to basically the adjudicator is about to make his decision, and then they end up bringing up another claim, so now they get to stay in the house for another couple of months.
Yes.
So
how is that? See, that's the fairness, Tony. That's the fairness. Where is the fairness? They could say that the evicted sheriff could be almost at your door, and they can call in and say that they paid, so eviction gets stopped until there's another hearing to prove that there was, payment made to the board.
That's right.
And at that time, there's a fee for it. I think it's a $25,000 fine if you lie about this, but it seems like the tenants do not get penalized as much as a landlord would get penalized for not maintaining his unit at no fault to his.
And the fees even to bring a claim to the Landlord Tenant Board has went up this year.
Oh, it's skyrocketed. It's skyrocketed for no apparent reason. Of it's more easier. You're filing more online. I don't see why they're having to increase their rates, and they do get a lot of claims throughout the facilities in each region. That's can I buy the Landlord Tenant Board?
And another one that's making big headwaves, I just want to touch on this a little bit. I don't know if you heard this with your group or if landlords are complaining to you. How about marijuana? Medical marijuana right now, that's becoming a huge thing right now. And let's say if you're renting to somebody upstairs, somebody downstairs, are you been getting any of these complaints?
Marijuana has been one of the articles that was shared in the group to have a discussion on, and any landlord that does the maintenance themselves would realize that through cigarette smoke, it does a lot of damage into the drywall, and the smell never leaves, especially for a non-smoker coming into a rental unit. They can tend to smell the nicotine that was on those walls, not including the cost of actually scraping the nicotine off the walls. It's very pricey for the landlords to do that each time tenants move out. So I would hate to see what marijuana is going to be like, not for the sake that it's going to be more of a thicker residue on the walls, but it's also going to bring in some moisture. And I'm not quite sure, but I want to start checking with the insurance companies, because if your place was deemed as a grow-up or a meth lab, there could be some type of rules and regulations that your insurance company may not cover you for that reason. So it becomes more of a danger as well, because there's people who I actually can say have their medical marijuana license, but they are bringing traffic of other drug dealers to their property.
And here's another thing too. What about deposits? So it's illegal to put as a deposit, like any damage deposits. Do you think we should have damage deposits for stuff like this?
We can say we want damage deposits, but we have to be prepared to think that the government could do something different, just like around the BC area, where you get first month's rent and a damage deposit. And that's something that landlords are going to have to say, do you want last month's rent, or do you want first month's rent and half a month's rent considered to be the damage deposit? And how does that become enforceable when the tenants dispute that they did not leave the unit in despair as much as the landlord thinks that they have?
That's true too. So and this is a new thing right now. This is being debated at Queen's Park right now.
And this is the marijuana that it has to be not grown in these apartments, and it shouldn't be smoked in these apartments. If we're already doing stuff on a provincial level of trying to stop people from smoking outside of parks and outside of City Hall, but they also have it where, there's other municipalities that are trying to create smoke-free buildings.
That's right.
So if we bring in, you're allowed to smoke marijuana, then we get the whole smoking thing again. So obviously people don't like the smell of it, and there's going to be more complaints coming from tenants, and it can definitely shy away some of these good tenants that we want to have at our building, because the whole building is stinking like marijuana.
But remember, it's medical use, though.
And for medical use and having it having the outside to go to do it would be ideal, because of the damages that type of medication can cause to a property. Right. And if they want to keep things looking in safety and in good repair for the tenants, because that's why we have property standards involved with the investors, to make sure that these places are very livable and clean and safe.
No, and I agree with you 100%, but we have to there has to be some kind of focus plan in regards of removing the smell afterwards, and who should be bearing the cost, if it's the landlord or the tenant in a situation like this. Because if somebody's growing inside their house or whatever, like you said, there's going to be insurance problems right now, and the landlords right now, it seems to be very risky to be a landlord nowadays.
It's a very risky time to be a landlord, because we are living in a housing crisis. We have people who have, close to a down deposit, but the bank is not lending out the money, but they make good money and they just need to be in the rental industry. And then we have people that can't even put the food on their table, and they're looking for cheap areas to rent. But unfortunately, the landlords are even trying to bail ship as much as they possibly can in most places, or convert to just single-family homes and hoping that can work, or they are getting into the commercial side of things.
That's right. And so ladies and gentlemen, so with this very special guest of mine, Kayla, do you have any advice for anybody that wants to be a landlord? Any advice on becoming a landlord or kicking out tenants or whatever the case may be? Do you have any final thoughts for us?
If they want to become a landlord, you got to meet other landlords, meet other investors, get their experience and how they manage their own rental properties, and how that pays out for them in the quality of tenants. And joining the Ontario Landlords Watch group, they'll meet other landlords. They'll see our past posts and what people say and what to look out for. But bottom line, they need to make sure that they can substantially raise a tenant for 6 months on their own income, because that is definitely a reality of how landlords are having to put the cost for the property taxes, insurance, mortgage, utilities, until they can get a proper eviction.
And do you have a website, a contact information if somebody wants to join your group?
We have our little website. We don't do too much with the website ourselves. We're more focused on the Facebook group and Twitter, just trying to get landlords out there what new rules and policies are coming into place, so we can either be prepared for them or to get together and stand up and protest them.
And is your Facebook open to the members of the public if they want to join?
You can find us on the Facebook group. We are a closed group, so you have to send a request into the group to get approved. It is very helpful to kind of give us a little bit of a story about you, just to make sure that you are a landlord, you are an investor, so that we can add you to the group quickly. So
there you go, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to join the group, I'm going to be posting the link. All you have to do is just give a little bit about a history in regards if you're a landlord or if you're an investor. And that way you could be part of this wonderful group that's giving out a lot of advice. It's giving a lot of awareness out there. And this is one of the best groups. I've been following it now for almost a year, I believe. And I actually got a lot of education from there. I actually learned a lot of things from her group than actually in school. Can you believe that? So you have to follow this group because they're always keeping everybody up to the know what's happening. And and if, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any problems with tenants or anything like that, I work for a company called Legal Advocacy here in St. Catharines, and our organization, our firm deals with stuff like this. We can be reached at 905-688 5598, and we do specialize in landlord and tenant issues. So I'd like to take this time to thank each and every one of you for listening. And Kayla, thank you so much for giving us the time for you to come on the show and to explain to us how it is to be a landlord.
Thank you so much, Tony. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Take care, everybody, and stay tuned for the next legal Know Your Rights. And we're looking forward to seeing each and every one of you. Take care, everyone.